had I thought when you and I first started working together that we would end up in a situation in which you were the one interviewing Guy Maddin, I would have been extraordinarily surprised, because I remember back in, I think it must have been probably the 90s, and it was either Leeds or Birmingham, memory fails, but I ended up having a curry with Guy Maddin because they were showing Archangel and Tales from the Gimli Hospital at a festival, which is basically a fantasy and horror film festival. And at that point, he was being compared very widely to David Lynch, although, as you said in that interview, the Buñuel comparison is kind of closer. Anyway, I've always been a big fan of him. Loved Saddest Music in the World, which was a big hit. Absolutely loved My Winnipeg, which is this documentary about the history of Winnipeg, half of which is completely untrue. But the weird thing is that the stuff that is true is weirder than the stuff that is untrue, including the thing about the frozen horses' heads becoming seats for people to sit on after the lake froze. Then, of course, as Kate Blanchett was saying in that, The Green Fog, which is a kind of reconstruction of a Hitchcock film through found footage. And then, I don't know whether you remember this, but I think when we were doing Kermode and Mayo's Home Entertainment, we reviewed Stump the Guesser, which is a short film that Guy Maddin made. So anyway, this finds him once again working with Evelyn Gale Johnson, takes its title apparently from the Fleetwood Mac album, which of course was being famously made when they were all involved in emotional divorces. So here, the band members are, as we said you heard in that interview, they're the members of the heads of the G7, drawn together for a conference under the theme of regret, and then getting lost in the woods during a zombie apocalypse. And I was always going to refer to that zombie apocalypse in the phrase that you used as the onanistic zombies. But Kate Blanchett decided to be slightly, I think she can get away with it in a way that we can't. Yes. But as Guy Maddin said, yes, but they are G7 leaders, but it's as if they're on grad night. They're not very leaderly. They've got their own personal problems. They've got love and regret and all that sort of things. And as for the zombies, they're not scary because they've got no bones, so they're very floppy. And then we have the kind of the spectacle of the floppy world leaders who were as floppy as the reborn bog people. I think the Guy Maddin called them funhouse mirror versions of each other, getting together to make a non-statement on a generalized crisis. And the whole thing about the statement mustn't state anything at all. And then it turns into a sort of a cross between a 50s sci-fi, brain film with a zombie film by George Romero, with a soap opera, and again, as you pointed out, with Scooby-Doo. And everybody looks ridiculous except for the onanistic bog monsters. Now, the key moment in that interview for me was when the subject of Ari Aster came up, because I remember sitting in the cinema with you watching Beau is Afraid, and I remember laughing at Beau is Afraid, and the more you didn't laugh at it, the funnier it became.
What a terrible film.
Yes, and I'm very aware that you're probably not invested in this, in Rumours, in the same way that I am.
You think?
Yes, that would just be my assumption. I would say this: it is in many ways Guy Maddin's most mainstream film. I mean, he said, yes, I know. I mean, he says it's more conventional in its appearance, which it is. It's got big stars. It's got a comparatively straightforward narrative. I mean, the G7 leaders are all there. All their phones stop working. They're lost in the woods, and there are reanimated bog monsters. So you can at least explain it in, you could do an elevator pitch on it. You got Kate Blanchett as this kind of, as the leader of the leaders. You didn't talk about Charles Dance, who is
I know. I realise that Charles Dance, being the most Charles Dance, the most English he's ever been, he plays the American president.
It's fantastic. It is, and of course, the fact that Charles Dance all the way through talks like Charles Dance, and at one point there is a little joke about why isn't he doing the accent, but it's really fleeting. I mean, it's so fleeting you almost miss it. I thought he was just brilliant, and then all the other worldies, and the whole thing is that they're all having dinner together. Their phones don't work. Suddenly, the zombies rise up, the onanistic zombies who are spilling their seed on the ground, we presume, in order to bring forth some kind of new age of enlightenment. Plus, there is a giant brain which is in the middle of the woods, and in the end, it's kind of like, I thought it was very funny. It's like The Shining meets the brain from Planet Arus, but set in the middle of an episode of Yes Minister, because the joke about we have to make a statement that doesn't actually state anything that we can be held to is a very Yes Minister gag. And then you've got Alicia Vikander as this character who has become completely devoted to the brain. And then there's a really funny joke about the fact that she starts speaking this language. She's speaking a space language. She's speaking a language from the future. Oh, no, it's Swedish. So
that was funnier the way you told it than it is in the film.
Okay. So my hunch was right that you're not a fan.
Well, surreal avant-garde comedy is not my thing.
Okay.
That is certainly true. But my pompous and overblown reaction is this: that there are people and organizations and countries who say that all politicians are useless, that they're all the same, and that there's no point in voting, and that democracy is fragile, and some countries it's more fragile than others, vis-a-vis South Korea.
Yeah.
And I actually found this film unbearably smug.
Okay.
Oh, how terrible it is to live in a liberal Western democracy. Oh, it's really, really awful. And look at these terrible leaders who actually obviously only got to their position because people voted for them. So that was so I just thought this is pretty unbearable all the way through. But I accept, that's a ridiculous reaction.
No, it's not ridiculous.
But okay. that was my reaction. But this isn't the kind of film for me, so that's where I start.
No, sure. So what I would say to that is, well, firstly, what you've said is completely legitimately true. That's absolutely right. The difference is, I don't think the movie is saying what you think it's saying, or not exactly what you think it's saying. I think that in the same way as, one of the things that everyone always said was a problem with Yes Minister was that apparently Margaret Thatcher really loved it. Okay. And that's caused a lot of anxiety for people who love Yes Minister, because they love the fact that what it demonstrates is that government is just to do with the perpetuation of government. And then Margaret Thatcher loves it because she thinks it's to do with bureaucracy not allowing her to do what she wanted to do, blah, blah, blah. I think in the case of this, it's a comedy. It is a comedy first and foremost. And it was interesting that although Cate Blanchett was quite front foot about, the system isn't working and it's only serving the top 5%, blah, 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 blah. Guy Maddin, who's never been a political filmmaker with a big P, was much more of it's a kind of, it is Scooby-Doo. It is this absurdist, in the same way that Todd Haynes will take melodramas and will remake them as a Todd Haynes movie. Guy Maddin is taking the form of, science fiction, B-picture, Scooby-Doo, all that sort of stuff, and remaking it as a Guy Maddin thing. I do agree with you that if what you're looking for is an incisive political satire, you won't get it. What you will get is, I think, probably the most accessible Guy Maddin movie. And that tells you, firstly, a lot about Guy Maddin's movies. And secondly, that I come to this from having followed Guy Maddin's career since Tales of the Gimli Hospital, and since the point in which he was in that, absolutely avant-garde, dreamy, post-David Lynch, surreal horror mode. And so for me, I enjoy it stylistically like that. And I also couldn't quite believe that he had managed to assemble this cast. Because, Charles Dance, I love Charles Dance anyway, but Charles Dance I thought was fantastically funny. But I agree, I don't think it is a savage political satire. And I absolutely agree with you that all the let's not vote because it's not, point, here am I wearing this T-shirt, of course. And
what's the T-shirt say?
Oh, this is the Rock Against Racism T-shirt. And meanwhile, I write for The Observer, who are currently out on strike. So, but I think that that's not what the film is. I think the film is a Guy Maddin comedy that is actually more interested in and I'll say it once because Cate Blanchett did, the masturbating bog people than it is in the politics.
Yes. In general, I didn't find it helpful. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't think it. I don't think it's helpful, but I don't think that's what it's meant to be. Kate has also described it elsewhere as a stupid film for a stupid time. So.
And that, actually, I think, to refer to a conversation that we had a week or so ago, isn't it interesting how absurdist comedy doesn't age in the same way as other comedies? That when it's absurdist surrealism, like The Goon Show, you were citing Python, it tends to be more of its time. Like I said, the most the most specifically political gag in this, the most yes minister gag in this is they have to make a statement that doesn't state anything. That's it.